good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here for our Rossmore Wildfire Evacuation Forum. It's one of the first we've ever done here, and I'm excited we're doing it. We have an incredible panel today, as you can see up on the stage, and we'll be introducing them as we go through this program. But first off, I am Tom Cashon. I am the Public Safety Manager for the Golden Rain Foundation. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I've been here for about a year, and I'm enjoying it. It's been a fun challenge, and I'm enjoying all the things we get to do together. I'm so happy we finally get together, too. We've done a lot of things on Zoom, and now we're actually together and on Zoom. So we'll keep doing that as we keep educating our community on how to be even safer here in Rossmore. This was originally set for April of 2020. I don't know if anybody remembers back in that day what might have happened. Yeah, so I was working with Dennis Bell. I was a lieutenant with the Walnut Creek Police Department at that time, and we had set up that we were going to do a live evacuation drill here in Rossmore. We scheduled it for April of 2020, and then shortly after we scheduled it, the big C hit. So we canceled it. Then I came here, and then I've been working with Carla and her team in order to bring it, and I have to admit, I am so thankful for the city of Walnut Creek. They were supportive right off the bat. They said, we're going to get it done. Once we get through this COVID thing, we're going to get it done. And we started moving through, and here we are today. So I'm really excited that we were able to do it, and I can't thank the city of Walnut Creek enough. But before we start, I just want to point out our CEO, Tim O'Keefe, is in the back of the room. So hi, Tim. Thanks for coming and being so supportive. And then the next person I want to introduce is the city manager for the city of Walnut Creek, Dan Buckshire, for a few words.
Thank you, Tom, and welcome everybody. It is nice again to be here in person and to see all of you here. I've been the city manager for about 4.5 years, so about half pre-COVID and half COVID, which has made for an interesting tenure here as the city manager. But I wanted to share briefly, as I have three primary roles as the city manager. The first is support the mayor and council. The second is to oversee the operations and finances for the city. And the third, which I think is the most important, is to serve as the Emergency Services Director. And it's a role that I take very seriously. It's something that we practice regularly. And it's nice to see that there is such interest. Obviously, public safety and wildfire preparation and evacuation is on your minds, as it is ours. Over the last 3+ years, we have spent a tremendous amount of time focusing on wildfire prevention first and foremost, and evacuation as well in the event that there was a fire. What I want all of you to know is Rossmore is a very important part of the city. 1 out of every 7 residents live in Rossmore, and that's something we think about very regularly at this city, of how best to keep Rossmore safe under any condition. And so most of this work that we've been doing over the last several years has gone on behind the scenes, but it's been a lot, and so we are going to share today is daylight a lot of that work that's been occurring. The coordination amongst multiple agencies. We only have some of the agencies here this evening. There are several others that would be involved in a true emergency that we work with on a regular basis. We have thorough plans that have been created, put into place, and what you'll hear more about are plans to test that plan to see how that will work in a simulated environment that will be coming up here in May. So thank you very much for being here. It's great again to see the turnout. It's great to be here in person. And I would like to introduce Carla Hansen, our Deputy City Manager.
Thank you, Dan. I'm sorry, I'm a clapper. Before we get to Carla, real quick, I just want to show everybody, I'm sure everybody grabbed one of these, our latest edition of our evacuation card and fire safety, wildfire safety. So I do have to point out one thing that I just was told before I came in here, thanks to EPO Harris Greenberg. The QR code on the back for CWS is correct, but then Nixle goes right to CWS as well. So, of course, like anything, I have 10,000 of these things incorrect, but it's all right, we'll get through it. But the rossmore.com, if you go there, that is the correct Nixle link, and that you can sign up with Nixle. But I assume everybody's already signed up for Nixle. So with that, Carla.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's good to see you. My name is Carla Hansen. I'm the Deputy City Manager for the City of Walnut Creek, and thank you, Dan and Tom, for that introduction. So I'm here to give you the run of show and to tell you a little bit about what we've been doing. So what are you going to be doing for the next hour and a half that we sit here? We've done the introductions. So here's our agenda for today. We have our partners from the Walnut Creek Police Department, CAL FIRE, and Contra Costa Fire to talk to you about wildfire response and what we would do in the event of a wildfire in general. And then we're going to get into the planned evacuation that we're doing on May 15th and what that's going to look like, whether you're participating in the evacuation or if you're just going to be a bystander and seeing it all happen. We wanted to make sure that this meeting was available to all of you here in person, all of you on Zoom, and all of you watching on Rossmore TV. And we will have a chance for folks to ask questions at the end, both on Zoom and in person. We're also going to be having our agency presentations from Rossmore EPO, our Cert team in Rossmore, American Red Cross is here with us today, and County Animal Services. So this is our team that is helping plan emergency preparedness and emergency operations throughout the city, but also very focused on Rossmore. And so we're all very excited to be here today. So as we go through the presentation, if you have questions, either on Zoom, if you're on Zoom, there's a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, so make sure you click that button, type your question. If you're in person, please raise your hand. We have folks, some volunteers on the side of the room who have note cards and pens for you to write your question down. So as those questions come up, make sure you write them down, and we will make sure that they get answered either here today, or we're going to gather everyone's questions, both online and in person, and make sure that those get answered and posted on the Rossmore website. So that's what we're going to be doing for the next hour and a half. Now I'm going to actually pass it over to Chris Bachman with Confire.
Okay, good afternoon. With me is Brian Gimbroni. He's a battalion chief with CAL FIRE, and we're going to provide an overview of what to expect if a wildfire were to occur in and around Rossmore, and then go into some of the planning efforts and kind of the behind the scenes that you don't see. And then we're going to wait and hold our questions until after the law enforcement piece is next, because they cover evacuations. And a lot of the questions typically seem to be around evacuations when it comes to fire, so we can answer those questions jointly. So first, what to expect if a wildfire occurs on or around Rossmore, whether it's coming from Rossmore or if it's coming towards Rossmore. So once a fire is reported, then your Engine 3, which is right outside your gate, is going to respond. They're going to assess the situation, identify how big it is if it's in the Rossmore immediate area, and they're going to call in the necessary resources. And if it's a full vegetation fire, you're going to get 4 of our engines, a bulldozer, our hand crew, 2 battalion chiefs, and a safety officer. Because it's in the what we call mutual threat zone of the SRA to the LRA. So LRA is local response area, which is inside of Rossmore. If you look up on the map, you'll see the red going around Rossmore. That's what's called the SRA. That's a state responsibility, which is CAL FIRE's responsibility. So since parts of Rossmore touch the SRA, that's why you also immediately get CAL FIRE will also get dispatched to respond in conjunction with ConFire if there's any incident in or around the areas of Rossmore. And then we're in communication as we're usually first on scene, telling them what we have and what additional resources we think we might need. I'll let Chief Gimbroni provide a little overview about the resources CAL FIRE would provide and what their responsibilities would be if that occurred.
So real quick, my response area covers Contra Costa, San Joaquin, and Stanislaus County. So I have a huge area that I cover. Like Chris was saying, when we are in those boundaries where it's red versus the blue, we'll put mutual threat zone. So any fire that is in that mutual threat zone, you're going to get a response from Contra Costa County Fire, and then you're also going to get a response from CAL FIRE. And typically from us, You're going to get 8 wildland engines. You're going to get 2 bulldozers. You're going to get 2 chief officers. You're going to get a helicopter with a crew. You're going to get 2 air tankers, and then you're going to get an air attack, which that person is in charge of all of the aircraft flying in the area. When we get into, I think the next thing that we're going to talk about, or that I'm going to hit on, is when we do evacuation orders, one of the things that I have to do is I have to go with law enforcement. Fire cannot issue an evacuation order or a warning. We recommend it to law enforcement, and they're the ones that actually do the evacuations. So what we'll do is we'll bring an agency rep from the local police department, and they will stand in the incident command group, which would be myself and another chief officer from Contra Costa County Fire, and then any other representatives like the mayor or anybody else would be in that group, and we would be coming up with plans on where we need to evacuate folks and where the priorities of the fire and what direction and where we're going to need to put our fire equipment. So I know that there has been a few questions on equipment coming in and folks trying to leave. We're always going to do it in an orderly fashion, and hopefully you guys will be going out the exit through the gates, and we're coming in through the gates. So just try and keep those pathways open. I know that was a question that was presented to us, is what do we do if we're in an evacuation order or a warning and the road becomes blocked? I'm going to let Chris do that one, just for the fact that it's technically, Rossmore is not in CAL FIRE's responsibility area. It's Contra Costa County Fires, and I kind of don't want to blur those lines. I want to make sure that Chris presents the message that Con Fire wants to present.
So what we want to make is that you're following the direction of law enforcement, because as Chief Gimberni mentioned, we're going to be in a unified command, and we're going to be making decisions of how many zones do we need to evacuate, who do we need to evacuate, and how many residents are we talking about. And based on that, are we able to keep those 2 incoming lanes open, or do we need to implement contraflow traffic? And if we're doing that, then that means our incoming units are not going to come through the front gate, but that's a logistical piece we have to implement. And we are going to practice that on the day of our drill, that we're going to open all 4 lanes to contraflow traffic, where everybody participating in the drill will be going out all 4 lanes of Rossmore. And all emergency services personnel that are coming in an alternate entrance. So our staging area for this event is going to be over by the dog park in the parking lot. Because that dog park, if you'll notice, there's gates on each side, and that was designed years ago by the Fire Prevention Bureau. That when we implemented that, was this is going to be an emergency access point should we need to use it, and that can support our apparatus coming in. So we're going to practice that on the day of the drill, that this is where all our incoming units are going to come in once the residents are evacuating. And then we have a nice staging area away from the command post then to direct those resources where they're going to go. But in the event that we're not to where we need a contraflow traffic, and you're directed just to stay in those 2 lanes, then obey the officers of what they're requesting you to do. Go out in an orderly fashion, and we'll monitor what the traffic patterns are doing, and do we need to modify that. One of the things that kind of gives us that situational awareness of what we're dealing with is the Alert Wildfire Camera Network system. And if you'll notice on the top picture, that's what we would see. We have access to this in our dispatch cameras. In fact, the residents or the public has access to this as well. But from our dispatch center, we can control the cameras. So if they're not aimed the exact direction we want, or if we need to zoom in a little more to get a better view of the column of smoke, we can do that. So this gives us great situational awareness if a fire is immediately reported. Our dispatchers are doing that immediately. They're pulling that up on the other screen of their computer, and they're evaluating. They're letting those incoming units know we're already seeing a column of smoke, or there's no smoke showing at this time, to kind of get us prompted to what type of resources do we need to immediately be thinking that we might need to request, because this fire is growing rapidly and maybe it's went undetected for some time. The next piece I want to cover is the shaded fuel break and defensible space. So if you'll notice on the bottom picture, that we talked about where the SRA is. So that red line that's going around Rossmore, that's a proposal that we put in for CAL FIRE for their fire prevention grant to put a shaded fuel break pretty much 3/4 the way around Rossmore, protecting both the homes from the wildland area and what I would also call protecting the wildland area from the homes, because we also run a decent number of structure fires out here. And we're also concerned that what if on one of those windy days we have a structure fire out here that then was to catch the hill on fire and run into the Los Trampas Ridge? By strategically placing that shaded fuel break in between the Los Trampas Ridge and the residents, it's going to provide protection both ways. If a structure fire occurs in Rossmore, it's going to provide us that kind of defensible space that it's going to work slowly up that hill, that we can go in, get a line around it, and prevent it from going into the Los Trampas Ridge. And likewise, if it's coming from the Los Trampas Ridge into Rossmore, it's going to provide us that boundary that we need to put in a defensive line and protect your homes and keep it from coming through Rossmore. We should know in about another month or so if we're successful in achieving this grant. But even if we're not, we're still working with Rossmore and evaluating how we can utilize our Crew 12 in specific areas of improving that, the reduction work that they've so incredibly done in those areas behind the homes, but making that fuel break a little wider than what it is. That doesn't mean we're cutting down trees. It means we're thinning them up to the 6-foot height. So we eliminate that, what we call ladder fuel, to go from the ground up into the tree, so we don't have crowning where the entire trees are catching on fire. It's just running across the grass and the litter on the ground. And when it's smaller like that, that's what we're able to extinguish with a hose or a hand line. Next, I'd like to kind of go into and explain the whole unified command with fire and police. Chief Gimbroni mentioned that, but I'd like for him to explain a little more that we're even practicing that. And we went through an incredible drill yesterday out in Moraga Rend off St. Mary's Road. In fact, Tom gave me a call and said, hey, one of my dispatchers heard some chatter on one of the channels about a fire approaching Rossmore. I'm like, no, we're participating in a drill. We're on a training channel right now. But we spent over 3 hours yesterday walking through an exercise of how the command and general staff, both law and fire, would work together if an event were to happen and it was coming towards Rossmore. But I'll let Chief Gimbroni give some more details on that.
So with that program yesterday, it was our incident management team from the East Bay. So CAL FIRE has their own incident management team, so when we have a large extended attack fire, we'll bring a camp in, we'll set everything up, we'll do all the logistics at a disclosed location. So yesterday, we had a smaller local team, so if we have a fire that goes, we call it from initial attack to extended attack, we would bring that command team in, and it's made up of a lot of the local agencies, chief officers, so that way we can have that transition from an initial attack to an extended attack to a major attack where the CAL FIRE resources come in. But yesterday, we took, like Chris was saying, about 3 hours to run a scenario where we had a fire in Bollinger Canyon burn towards the community of San Ramon. And in that, we had law enforcement, we had folks from Zone Haven to actually run scenarios where we could take the zones in that program and start ordering evacuations and just kind of trying to work out some of the, I don't want to call them the bugs, but some of the bugs that we would have had if we really would have had an incident. And when we do these programs and we have these drills like we're going to have out here, we really find some of the problems that we could encounter when if we do actually have an incident. So yesterday's event was very good. It was kind of eye-opening for us because of with the mountain ranges that we have, they're not super tall, but we do have some communication issues, which for us, we think that we're going to be able to talk until we actually get out there, and we can't. So these type of incidents that we're doing really brings it home to let us know where we can improve on if we were to actually have an incident out here. I don't know if that's exactly what you're looking for, Chris, but I think with the evacuation drill that we're going to have out here, we had one on Saturday out in the little community of Canyon. And it's really it's 1 lane in, 1 lane out, And we actually had, I don't know if any of you folks have been out there, but we had some of our fire equipment drive up while the folks in the community came out. And I want to say there's about 200-ish folks that live up there. And it was really an eye-opener that once we get the fire resources going up, there's not really a whole lot of evacuation for those folks to come out. So it was a good eye-opener for everybody, so that way we could really see where the advantages and disadvantages of trying to get folks out of those communities. So hopefully this drill will give us some perspective on what to expect if we do have something out here.
And the last item I want to cover is the need to evacuate or to evaluate the areas to evacuate if necessary. And we've had multiple fires out here that have been wildland or vegetation fires, but we've been able to keep them small by a quick response, and it's usually because of early notification by our residents. And we get units on it immediately, and we keep it within usually 1 acre to 5 acres. But in the event that doesn't happen, what we're here to pass the message on today is if that evacuation order is given, please don't be complacent because you've been fortunate in the past and not had to evacuate. I know you've seen us come in here year after year when we put the fire out and there's little disruption. But if you get an alert on your phone that your zone has been notified to evacuate, then please evacuate. Evacuate in an orderly fashion and do it calmly because you're going to have to, you may look outside and say, why am I being evacuated? It looks like it's relatively calm. It's what we're anticipating it may do next. And what we don't want is we don't want to wait till the last minute to pull that trigger and say, now we need to evacuate 3 or 4 zones all at once. So it will be very strategic in the areas that we select, and we'll be working hand in hand with our law enforcement PD of Walnut Creek to organize and facilitate that, and he'll talk next on that item. And then the last is the contraflow traffic option, which I mentioned, and we'll be practicing that on the day of the drill. I would like to hold questions until the very end. I would like to introduce Drew. He's going to come up and talk for Walnut Creek PD, and then we'll answer any questions about fire evacuation and law enforcement altogether at the end of his presentation. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Chris. I'm Drew Olson. I'm the lieutenant in charge of Sector 1, which Rossmore falls in for Walnut Creek Police Department. I'm gonna, this will work. There we go. So what is Zone Haven? You heard the fire guys talk about Zone Haven for a second. Zone Haven's a company and a website that was created in response to the large-scale wildfires that Northern California in particular have experienced over the last 5 or 6 years, starting with the ones up in Santa Rosa. Zone Haven is a company that has started working with, started with Bay Area cities and are now moving all throughout the state of California to break up each city into separate zones so that we can target our notifications to the people that really need it at that moment. And we can give different types of notifications. We could give a notification to prepare. Sorry, my radio came on. We can give notifications to prepare for an evacuation, to shelter in place, to evacuate immediately. We can give updates throughout an extended evacuation scenario so that people understand what's going on and what we're seeing and what fire is seeing and how things are progressing. In Rossmore, you guys are broken up into 8 zones, as you guys can see through the pictures. They're pretty well marked throughout Rossmore. Depending on where you live, you should probably know where what zone you're in. The Rossmore evacuation cards have been updated. You guys, a lot of you have them in your hands right now. If you haven't picked them up, they're out in the lobby as well. So please take those with you just so that you can understand what zone you're in and what you'd be looking at for an evacuation. And then We're going to move on to our role in a disaster like a wildfire. For the police department, like you said, there'd be unified command, so we would have most likely me or my captain or even our chief would be at the incident command post making decisions on, with the fire department, making a decision on when we would evacuate. We really do rely on their expertise on how the fire is progressing and where things are going. But like you said, ultimately we make the decision on when we're going to evacuate. And when that happens, we would send something out through Zone Haven and it would alert all the residents. I would also be having my officers going door to door on the areas that are most affected and trying to make sure people are evacuating immediately. We wouldn't have the staffing to do that necessarily by ourselves, so we'd be calling in mutual aid, we'd be calling in help from the sheriff's department and a lot of our partner agencies in the area for the initial evacuation. And then going forward, we would be staffing the streets and making sure that people are able to evacuate in a timely manner. So we would have traffic control at all the major intersections, getting people out. So the important thing is don't speed, just drive as calm as you can, and there will be people kind of directing you out of Rossmore when they talk about the contraflow. If that's in effect, you will see you're being directed into that area. So it'll be very obvious as to where you're supposed to be driving when there is a contraflow scenario going on. And then what can you expect if the disaster is kind of prolonged? So if there is a long-term evacuation like we've seen up in the North Bay, up in the Napa area, then the police department, working with our partner agencies all throughout Northern California, will be staffing patrol officers to be patrolling the areas to kind of keep the area safe from looters and stuff like that. I've worked in 4 or 5 different disaster zones doing just that. The officers that come are very dedicated. They want to make sure that your stuff is not being that you're not being victimized even more than already having to evacuate the area. Luckily for Rossmore, it's a pretty easy task for us. We can shut down the entrance to Rossmore, so it would be very difficult for people to get in. But just so you know, there would be a large police presence in the area going forward if there was a large-scale evacuation. I think that's about it for me. I was going to do questions for police and the fire departments. Do you want me to do it at the end? Oh, okay. And I will be turning it back over to Carla. Sorry for the confusion on the questions. We'll be taking those at the end. Carla?
Thank you, Drew. And a reminder, clearly we've gotten a lot of information so far. We may have some burning questions. So a reminder, if you're on Zoom, there is a Q&A button. Click that Q&A button, type your question, and send it in. If you're in person, raise your hand and we'll get you a note card, and we will get you a pen. You can write those questions down and pass them back. And we will be taking questions and answering those at the end. So what I'm going to be talking about is really taking it up a level and talking to you a little bit about what our planning efforts have looked like. Our city manager, Dan Buckshire, told you that he serves as the emergency services director for the city. And what that means is he is directing all operations if there is an emergency. And what he stressed to us is that we have to be excellent at responding to emergencies. And that's why we practice and we plan, and we practice and we plan, because we're really toning those muscles in the event that if something happens, we can respond, and we can do it in an excellent way to make sure you all are safe. So the folks that are here today, obviously the Walnut Creek Police Department, the Contra Costa Fire, CAL FIRE, Golden Rain Foundation, and our community partners, we are all working together to plan and practice. And we do this on a monthly basis. We actually meet monthly, and we're talking about what we would do and how we would plan in an event of an emergency. We have collaborated on a evacuation and emergency management plan for the Golden Rain Foundation. We've also collaborated on a emergency management plan for the city. And just recently, we have completed an evacuation plan for the entire city of Walnut Creek, but we've really zoomed in on Rossmore because this is a very high-risk area, and also there's a lot of folks who live here, and we want to make sure that you all are safe in the event of an emergency. So as we plan, we also need to test these plans to see if they work. And if there's lessons learned that we need to apply in our plans, that's what we do. And that's why we're planning this May 15th evacuation drill. We really want to test what we've planned with all of you. And so my next slide is really going to talk about what to expect on May 15th. So we will be evacuating the zone, I can't see it from there, but I can see it here. WCR, Zone 2. As you all know it here. So we are evacuating Zone 2. So why only one mutual? Why only this zone? And really the point is to start small so we can really stay safe while we evacuate, while we test our evacuation plan, and then we can expand it in later evacuation drills. But this is our first evacuation drill in Rossmore, and we really want to test it on a small scale to really learn some lessons to apply them later. So those of you who live in this zone are going to be asked to, and maybe you already have, but you'll be asked to sign up to get an alert. And that alert will come to you at 7 a.m. on May 15th, which is a Sunday morning. So it'll be a really fun Sunday for all of us in the morning. So you'll get that alert, and then you'll proceed to Heather Farm Park, which is our temporary evacuation point. And what you'll see during that is really traffic control. You'll see our officers and our Cert members doing traffic control within Rossmore and also in Heather Farm Park. And you'll also see your neighbors leaving Rossmore. And so this is really a test to see how many people we can get out in how fast of a time. And really to see are the routes that we have planned sufficient. If you're not participating in the drill and you're not going to be getting that alert at 7 a.m., expect a lot of traffic in the morning. So if you're heading to brunch in the morning, there will be a delay. You may also, our folks that are doing traffic control may delay you from proceeding on the route, but that's to make sure that we can get all of our evacuees out and to Heather Farm Park. And then at Heather Farm Park, we're setting up a temporary evacuation point, and we really wanted to practice this because as we evacuate people, they need somewhere to go. So what you'll be seeing if you're participating in the drill is our community partners that would be there at a temporary evacuation point, what they would set up. So we have our American Red Cross there, we'll have the City of Walnut Creek there, we'll have Animal Services there, and our Cert team there. And so they'll be there on the day of to hand you information and tell you all the things that you can do to get personally prepared in the event of evacuation, but also just to give you that experience of what it might be like to be evacuated to a temporary evacuation point. And I believe I am introducing our agency partners that have been so kind, gracious, and vital to this planning process. And we will start with the Walnut Creek Cert team. So I'm inviting Margaret Campos up.
Thank you, Carla. How are we moving the screen? My slide down. Okay, thank you. Hopefully everybody can see me above the podium. I'm Margaret Campos. I'm the volunteer. Sorry. I just want to make sure you can see me. Margaret Campos. I am the volunteer program manager for Walnut Creek Cert. Just want to tell you a couple things about our organization. So Walnut Creek Cert is part of a group of about 2,700 Cert organizations that are resident in the United States and in the territories. We all are trained using a FEMA Cert Basic Training Program, and we are coordinated by the California Office of Emergency Services. We're part of the Citizen Corps organization, and we are sponsored here in Walnut Creek by the City of the city of Walnut Creek. So we receive our training. It's about 20 plus hours of training in everything that you see on the left side column. So situational awareness, how to assess levels of danger, levels of medical conditions, how to extinguish very small fires, turn off utilities, do light search and rescue. So a whole variety of supportive activities that can help out our community before professional first responders are able to arrive in a disaster. We don't deploy ourselves. We never self-activate, so we wait for the city of Walnut Creek to give us a notification that they want us. Sometimes they may tell us directly what they want us to do. In the absence of communications, we will go into a certain number of procedures to set up our radio system. We have communication system around the city and into the city's emergency operations center using ham radio, both analog and digital. And we begin to make situation assessments of what's going on in the city. So there's a whole variety of functions that we can provide as service to our community in the event of a disaster. And aside from a disaster, there are a number of activities that we can provide support in. So we've assisted the Walnut Creek Police Department with missing persons drills. We staffed the vaccination clinics doing the same kind of parking activity that we'll be doing at your drill on the 15th. We partnered with the Red Cross to have them train us in how they would respond in setting up a shelter in the event of a disaster, so we can provide assistance to them. And indeed, CERT organizations around the United States do a lot of things. With the emergence of so many disasters, our role's beginning to change. It's getting to be more codified with very specific role descriptions and requirements, and we're expanding. So for example, in the CZU fire, those advanced notifications, hey, you're the next ones who might be needed to evacuate, that was sent out door to door by CERT. So the city and our professional first responders can begin to get creative about how to use Walnut Creek CERT. So that's who we are. If you're interested in more information, you can send me an email at cert@walnut-creek.org. It's on the bottom of that slide. And also, I just wanted to mention, our organization is solely fueled by our volunteers. We are not financially sponsored by anybody. So we don't do a lot of trainings because it is labor intensive and volunteer intensive. But if you're interested in preparing yourself and you want a little deeper dive, you can go to the California State Technical Institute, which is csti.org, and for free you can register to take CERT basic training classes, really nice interactive classes. You won't become a CERT because you can't accommodate the hands-on training that's required, but it's a really good way for you to prepare. So send me an email if you have any questions, and thank you.
And next we'll bring up Brianna Taylor from our American Red Cross.
Good afternoon, and thank you. I'm Brianna Taylor. I've been a volunteer with the American Red Cross since Hurricane Katrina. I think that's like 16 years now. I've lost track of time. I've deployed around the country to hurricanes, tornadoes, wildfires in places other than California, and every summer I'm in California somewhere responding to wildfires. So I'd like to talk to you a little bit about Red Cross has a role in the prepare, respond, and recover phases of disaster. And like Margaret said to you, one of the things that we do during preparedness, and like we're doing with Walnut Creek right now, is we work and train. We train to get everybody that we can ready for disasters. Whether you take a personal preparedness seminar from us, or whether we're training CERT volunteers how to shelter, or working with the city of Walnut Creek in developing a relationship so that when something happens, we're right there working together to open up a shelter. And that's what I want to focus on, our role during a disaster. So just like Margaret said about CERT doesn't just self-deploy, neither does Red Cross. We're asked to come in and help our care and shelter partners with our government agencies to actually open up a shelter. It's something we do all the time. It is one of the places where we have our expertise. And so side by side, we are there with our care and shelter government partners, figuring out where to open up a shelter, what's needed, and then we go ahead and either assist them and do it, or do it, the Red Cross does it totally. So Carla mentioned a TEP, which is a temporary evacuation point. So we know when something happens, people need a place to go. People who aren't going to a family member, to a friend's house, people who have nowhere to go need somewhere to go to get information and find out what's happening. So a couple of years ago, we started working with the state of California to the process of opening up TEPs, temporary evacuation points. And they're actually the responsibility of our government partners to open, but we train and we support those evacuation facilities when they're opened. Because while they're opened, we're getting ready to open up a shelter. So at the temporary evacuation point, it's really a place to go to find out, are you going to be able to go back home, or are you going to have to make other accommodations? And those accommodations, as I said before, might be with friends, family members, it might be a hotel, or it actually might be the shelter. So we're busily getting that shelter open. We have a representative in the Emergency Operations Center if it's opened, and if it isn't open, we're in constant communication with, here it would be the city of Walnut Creek and Rossmore, to find out what's happening. Also with fire and law enforcement, so that we know and can open up a shelter with all the information that we need to determine a location, a safe location. And at that shelter, you can expect a safe place to stay. You can expect to be fed and nourished, not only with food, but we have our spiritual care people who are there. We have disaster mental health and disaster health services, because we know when you leave home, you may leave home with just the clothes on your back, your go kit, which I hope you all have, but you may not have your medications. There are lots of things you may not have, and so coming to the shelter, we will help you with all of those things. So working together with our government partners, with the city of Walnut Creek, with fire, we are looking to find that exact place that will be safe for you to go to. Now, what happens is that normally the largest disaster we respond to, the largest number of disasters we respond to are home fires. And so preparing ahead of time for whether it's a home fire, a wildfire, is extremely important. The work you do ahead of time determines what will happen when that disaster strikes. So whether it's the wildfire or preparing for something unexpected to happen, I urge you, please, please, do get your go kit together, participate in these activities, these trainings, because they may all just save your life. And they'll bring you to us safely so we can help you on the road to recovery, help you with the resources that you'll need to somehow bring your life back to a place where you can live again and feel comfortable. So those are the things that I really wanted to mention. We are there for you. I can't tell you, I do this work because I love the people that we serve. It's all of us, and it can be any one of us at any time. The thing about disasters is they don't discriminate. So whether it's you I see one day at a shelter or someone else, know that there is a caring person there to help you and be there with you as you move on the road to recovery. So, thank you.
All right, up next is Alana Wiseman from Animal Services to tell us what we are going to do with our furry friends in an evacuation.
Hello, I'm Lieutenant Alana Weissman with Animal Services. I am the supervisor for Central County, which includes Rossmore and the city of Walnut Creek. I also oversee our community animal response team, our CART team, which is a group of volunteers that will help us in emergencies. I'm going to repeat much of what's been said. Please prepare yourselves and prepare your animals. In many of the disasters that I've responded to, people won't leave without their animals or really don't want to leave without their animals, which I get. I'm a pet owner myself. So practice with your pets. Don't just practice by yourself. Practice with your cats especially. Get them used to that carrier. Make sure your pet has a go bag. Include their leashes, their collars, their vet records, some food, medication, their vaccine history. Everybody has a cell phone. Most everybody, I should say. I encourage you to have a copy of your pet's vaccine records on your phone, because if you evacuate and your dog or cat or any other animal needs to go to a boarding facility or a vet facility, they're going to want to know what vaccines your animal has. So similar to the Red Cross and Cert, we don't deploy ourselves in emergencies. Excuse me. We will get deployed either by fire, police, or the Office of Emergency Services, and we'll be asked to come and assist. The most ideal scenario is that your pet comes with you. We can go into homes when deemed safe by fire to rescue your pet for you. Ideally, your pet will go either with you or you'll have somewhere for it to go. In the case that you are unable to care for your pet, our department will set up an emergency center for the animals to care for them. This can be at our Martinez shelter. We only have one. If the disaster is so large that we can't house your animals at our Martinez shelter, we will work to find an emergency shelter in the county, ideally near the human shelter, to house your animals until you're able to reclaim them. So again, prepare your pets, get them microchipped, make sure their tags are current, all your phone numbers are up to date, have your emergency kits ready to go with your pet alongside yourself. On here I put our dispatch number that takes you to Animal Services for any issue, including in a disaster if you're evacuated and your pet has been left behind. Our department website and our Contra Costa Community Animal Response Team's website. On that website, there are many different forms, including a checklist for yourself and your pets to prepare to evacuate.
All right, up next is Fran Gibson from the Rossmore Emergency Preparedness Organization to talk to you about how to prepare yourself to evacuate.
Hello, I am delighted to see you here. This is a wonderful turnout for a very important issue that Rossmore faces as a community together. And I've had the privilege of working with the city officials and other partners and stakeholders as a resident here. We have several residents that are now on the city planning committee for this evacuation drill. This is the first drill in our 58-year history of Rossmore, and I'm very excited about it. Yay, yes. I want to ask a few questions for you as residents. Do you have a grab and go bag at home? All of you who do, raise your hands, please. Yes. I may be preaching to the church here. I understand that. FEMA does a survey every year, and they do it by age cohort. And they try to measure how many people in each age cohort throughout our republic from 18 and above. And every year I follow it very closely as your Rossmore EPO president. And every year it turns out that although we who are 65 and above, in terms of age, with all our life history, the skills that we have gotten together, we are the least prepared of any age cohort in America. And I would like to change that. We need a culture of preparedness here in Rossmore. I need to tell you all the people who are not coming to help you to bring you the 3 days worth of water, food, medications, and personal items that you need in your grab-and-go bag. Golden Rain Foundation is not coming. There's not a cache here large enough for the close to 7,900 people who live here. We don't have that. It is our responsibility as residents to get ourselves prepared, and that includes for, our pets need a grab-and-go bag too. Do you have an evacuation plan for your household? What is an evacuation plan, you might ask? Do you have 2 destinations in mind that you can go to in case one of those destinations is blocked by an incident or an event? I have 3, and I have exchanged with the 3 different destinations that those people can come stay with me in Rossmore if their neighborhood is imperiled by a wildfire or some other issue that requires evacuating. So be sure you have an evacuation plan. Please go to rossmoreepo.org, and if you click on the starred side bars, it's starred for resident resources, and we have good information on what to put in a grab-and-go bag, what is an evacuation plan, and do you have a communication plan? If I'm leaving here, I will text my sister who lives in the middle of Ohio. She is my central point contact person. She has a list of all my people, family and friends that I need to let them know that I am evacuating Rossmore and I'm headed to wherever it is I'm headed to. And I'll also text her, please don't call. Text get out in an emergency. They just line up and they go. We want to leave communications infrastructure, we want to leave that open for first responders. So have somebody that you could text, has to be at least 200 miles from Rossmore. Better if it's out of state. You text that one person and say, this is Fran, I'm going to Rock Ridge. I'll be with my daughter Wendy and her family, and I'll let you know when I get there. And she'll send out the texts or she'll make the calls for me. So that's a strong evacuation communication plan that you do need in any emergency or disaster. If you see, Tom Cashon has a wonderful red flag that he puts below Old Glory when it's a red flag day, and you're leaving or going out in either your gassed up car that takes gasoline or your electric vehicle or your hybrid vehicle. Look down and see if you are fully charged. Look down and see how much gas you have. I drive my neighbors crazy because I keep my car 3/4 full most of the time. I was evacuated from Oakland during the firestorm in 1991, and I sat on the lead up to the Bay Bridge and had to wait 2.5 hours to get across on the bridge. So we're going to be in parking lots and probably idling. So make sure that during fire season particularly, and of course every season now is fire season, we see it across America. We're in a new climate regime here in Northern California, in the American West. We're going into our 3rd worst drought in 1,200 years. So it's really important that you have a way to get out of here. If you do not have a way to get out of here and you have a local EPO team in your neighborhood, let them know that you're going to need some help. And that'll be one of the questions that is going to be directed to our panel today. What do I do if I have mobility issues? What do I do if I have no car? What do I do if I have no destination? And if you're signed up for Rossmore Nixle and for the county's community warning system, then that system is going to tell you where the shelters are that are open, and you will know where to go. You'll be given specific directions on what to do in an emergency, particularly a wildfire emergency. So make certain that you have your car is gassed up, and that if it's a car that needs charging, make sure it's fully charged. So if you see a red flag or you hear that we're under red flag conditions particularly, look down at your meter in your car as you're leaving Rossmore and make sure that your car is ready for an evacuation, because some of these evacuations are going to be very time consuming. Do you have the clothes? Do you have the food, the water, the medications that you need for 3 days to go in your grab-and-go bag? My grab-and-go bag is out there on the table in the lobby. Take a look at it. We also have some lists of what you can put in your grab-and-go bag that will meet your needs. Some of us are using durable medical equipment. Some of us, are using things that we need to have a power bank to take with us. Be sure that you are ready. There is no one that's going to come do that for you. It is the sole responsibility of us as Rossmore residents to get ourselves and our households fully prepared for a disaster and emergency. And as the new climate regime intensifies, I think all of us are sitting here because of all the things I hear as the EPO's president, the one that I hear most about is the angst around wildfires. So please do what you can. Every week that you go out to the grocery store or the drugstore, pick up an item and put it in your go bag. Go bags, what I have done in my go bag, a lot of people are concerned because the water is too heavy and you can't lift the bag. I'm kind of an upper body wuss. I can't lift mine. What I did was to go and buy aluminum canned water that has a shelf life of 50 years. That will outlast me and my children. And I have 24 cans that stay in my car, in the back of my car, and the heat from the car, we can get some intense temperatures here, as you well know, in cars that are parked out in the sun, and in the California heat as we go into the summer. The water that's in aluminum cans does not leach out. It's not impacted at all by the heat. If you're having water put in your car, in plastic containers, it can leach out chemicals. So I prefer the aluminum can is my answer to that. If you have any questions or concerns, my name and email is at the bottom of our homepage. I would be happy to help any of you if you're wondering, you have some questions about evacuating, you have some questions about wildfires. If you sign our list outside, you do not have to be a member of EPO to receive our messages, and a lot of our messages give you clear and good information on what to do in a disaster emergency that strikes Tice Valley. I would like to change FEMA's the survey, and our motto this year for Rossmore EPO is toward a readier Rossmore. So talk to your neighbors, talk to your EPO team members if you have members in your neighborhood. If you don't, you want to start one, get in touch with me. I would be delighted to help you do that. We're all in this together. I want to thank the city for its wonderful work on this evacuation drill. And I want to thank Tom Cashin for his wonderful work in helping make this happen. And I feel like we are going to be readier than we have ever been before now, and that's really important to me. The city has made me feel that the Rossmore community, we are vulnerable in the sense of being seniors and having more health conditions that impact our response to a disaster. They do care about us, and they do listen, and that is wonderful. Thank you for your time and your attention, and I am delighted to see all of you here.
Following Fran is a tall order over here. All right, well, thank you to everyone who came. We're going to be moving into our Q&A, question and answer time for the agenda. And we have a number of questions that were asked, and we're not going to be able to get to all of them. I'll just set that up front. However, all of the questions that you did write in, if you were in the room, and that you submitted on Zoom will be recorded and answered and put on the Rossmore website. EPO's website, sorry. So we're going to go through some of the questions that were asked, and we have our panel of experts here that are going to help answer them. So the first question we'll start with, we'll zoom in and talk about the May 15th drill. So the question is, if we have a family to go to, do we still have to go to Heather Farm Park? And I'm going to answer for our panel here. The answer is yes. One of our goals is to really see how many people we can get out of Rossmore and how long it takes. And so we're going to be counting you as you exit Rossmore, and we're going to be counting you as you enter Heather Farm Park at our temporary evacuation point. So if you have somewhere else to go, go there after you go to Heather Farm Park. Okay, next question. What if I don't have a car? How do I evacuate either on May 15th or in a general evacuation? And I'm going to look to our panel to help answer that question. Tom?
Yeah, I'll take that. I don't know if you knew this, but Fran just covered that. She talks about having a plan. You should not wait until it's too late to have a plan. So what we encourage all of our residents here in Rossmore is you talk to your neighbors. Your neighbors is the best way for you to get out of here. Don't wait for someone to drive in, because as you're going to see, on May 15th, we are closing down all the lanes into Rossmore. You will not be able to come into Rossmore. So if you're hoping your daughter or your son is going to come in and rescue you, no, that's not a good plan. Use your neighbors. Talk to your neighbors and have more than one, right? Because sometimes one neighbor might be on vacation or might be away or can't do it. So have a backup plan as well. So if you don't have a vehicle, please have a plan in place before you ever need to actually evacuate.
Can I add one thing to that as well? Is if you have somebody in your area, in your neighborhood that you know doesn't have a car, go and talk to them. Because they may not see this presentation, they may not know what is actually going on or what we're doing. But take the time, find somebody that doesn't have a car that lives in your community, and if they need help, help them out.
Okay, next question. So now we're going to get into more of the planning questions. So what alternate exits out of Rossmore will be opened for evacuating, and who unlocks them? Why don't we start with Drew, and then folks can chime in.
So yeah, one of the main alternate evacuation routes is going to be Stanley Dollar Drive out to Lafayette. There's an emergency easement out there, so either the police department or Securitas will be out there to open that and allow people to drive through. And we have the combination to it. Securitas does as well, and I'm sure the fire department does as well. But
if I could just follow up on that, though, those will only be open when the Walnut Creek Police Department designates it to be open. So if there's an evacuation, do not go straight to Stanley Dollar. If you're supposed to go straight out the front gate. If Walnut Creek Police Department determines we need to open that up, they will reroute you as you're trying to go out the front gate or towards the front gate, okay? So please don't go there, because it may be closed. And again, it's up to them to open it up, not for GRF or Securitas. We follow direction from them.
As we mentioned earlier, it just goes back to follow the direction of the law enforcement officers of where they're directing you to go. And if we need to use alternate routes to go out, that coordination will be done with the neighboring police department, and Lafayette will be on the other end of that exit point, then directing you where to go once you leave Stanley Dollar onto Lucas Ranch Road. Likewise, if there's an issue in Lafayette, they may be directed to come into the Rossmore community to evacuate as a temporary evacuation point, depending on where it's at. It works both ways. But again, it's all because it's strategically planned, and we all work together to make the right decision of how to evacuate the area that's impacted in the most efficient manner.
Okay, next traffic question. How will traffic be controlled in exiting for entries emptying out on the same major Rossmore roads?
I'm sorry, exiting out onto the same major Rossmore roads?
Yes.
So they're obviously controlled by, a lot of them are controlled by intersection or stop signs already, but we'll have, as people, In an emergency, I'll have officers out there directing traffic, and our PSOs will be out there directing traffic. I got you, and we're out here a lot, citing people for running stop signs. But back to the emergency, I'll have people directing traffic. It's going to be slow going because unless we open the entry lanes to exit traffic, it's going to be 2 lanes coming out. So it'll be a little bit slow going, but I'll have officers at the main intersection out on Tice Valley and directing people both directions to try and evacuate either into downtown Walnut Creek or out towards Highway 24.
Next question. Does Golden Rain Foundation have a plan for evacuating disabled residents?
No, we do not. That is your responsibility for living in here. You know, we are an active community, right? Active adult community. And so it's your responsibility to find your own way to evacuate. Again, please, please, please put a plan into place. If you need extra help, put it in before you ever need to actually evacuate.
And last question. Will the city have an annual Rossmore evacuation drill? And I'll take that one. I love the head nods and the smiles. Thanks, panel. So the short answer is we're going to get through the May 15th evacuation drill, and we're going to learn a lot of lessons from that drill. This is the first time, as we heard, in a long time that we are having an evacuation drill in Rossmore. So we're going to test it. We're going to test the plan that we wrote, and we're going to learn some lessons from that, and then we're going to practice again. Will it be next year? Probably not, because we do have a lot of other areas of the city that are like Rossmore, that are high risk, that have one way in, one way out, that we also need to practice with. Does that mean that we're not going to come back to Rossmore to do another evacuation? No. In the past, we have done an evacuation drill in the Lakewood neighborhood in Walnut Creek. That was to really help us prepare and test for a Rossmore evacuation. So as we do these evacuations, we learn a lot. This group of folks that are with me here today learn a lot, and we're able to adjust our plans, and so we can practice for the next drill. So it may not be next year, but we will practice again. So with that, I want to thank everybody for coming here this afternoon and participating in the event. Thank you everyone who is watching on Rossmore TV and on Zoom. Thank you to our volunteers who helped with the Q&A. And thank you to all of our partners here today. We could not do this without you, and we are keeping this Walnut Creek community safe because of you. So thank you. And with that, have a great evening.